Good morning. I'm excited to be here for the third time, so I guess I'm doing something right. If Dr. Stewart continues to invite me, so I thank him for his invitation, and to the administration and all those who work with him to put on this great conference. I hope this conference has been encouragement to many people who may be from New Orleans since the Saints lost on Sunday. So I hope this conference made up for the devastating loss that happened. I see some of you are still sad. That's why you're not laughing. It's okay. But thankful to be here, thankful to talk about the subject that's near and dear to my heart, social media and apologetics. But before we begin, I would like to start in a word of prayer. Would you bow your heads with me? God, we thank you for this day. We thank you for your grace, your mercy, and your truth. We thank you because you're faithful even when we're not faithful. God, we thank you for sending your son to die for us, to take our place. And I pray that you would speak through me today. Hide me behind your cross, that those who listen will only see you and not me. I pray something will be said that would help, empower, and encourage and strengthen. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. So today I'm going to be talking about rules of engagement, defending the faith through social media. I am a native of social media. My freshman year of college, Facebook hit the college scene. It was the good old days when you had to have a Facebook, when you had to have a college email to get on Facebook. Anybody remember those glory days? Before your great aunt was on Facebook and adding you and saying, why didn't you accept my friend request? It happened to me. I just felt like it might happen to somebody else. And so I've watched Facebook and social media grow. And it's funny because as social media began to grow and you can make statuses, because that wasn't a thing initially, and I watched my faith develop, there was a tension between how I displayed my faith on social media and the usefulness of it. And so as I'm learning theology and I'm in a religious studies program in undergrad, I'm like, man, I'm reading all this stuff. This is so cool. And you want to give it to the world. You know, when you learn it, you're like, everybody needs to know this. And so I'm typing stuff, I'm critiquing people, and my friend said something to me one day. She says, how do you expect anyone to listen to you if you are always criticizing them on social media? How do you expect anyone to listen to you if you are always criticizing them on social media? And I was like, that's a great point. And as an undergrad student, I might need to think about this. If I think I'm going into ministry, is this the most effective way to use this platform? And that led me on a journey to think critically about how I share my faith through social media. What is social media? Social media is forms of electronic communication, such as websites for social networking and microblogging, through which users create online communities and share information, ideas, personal messages, and other content such as videos. The reason why this is so important is because so many people spend the bulk of their time on social media. The most popular forms are Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, Snapchat. By a show of hands, who likes Facebook more? Facebook more. Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, and this mysterious thing I still haven't learned how to use, Snapchat. Okay, only a few of you use Snapchat. Okay. It's not, at least I'm not the only one who doesn't know what they're doing when it comes to Snapchat. Most people don't realize how much time we actually spend. The average time spent on social networking increases every year. You can see the upward tick from 2012 to 2017 in minutes per day. And it's amazing, and I think on Judgment Day, when we go before God and say we didn't have time to pray, if he pulls up our social media stats. Because we seem to have time for social media. average on activities, and this will be time spent in lifetime. So according to stats, you'll do homework in your lifetime about a year and 8 months. Socializing with actual people, a year and 11 months. Shopping, 2 years and 2 months, but that could depend on your gender. It might be more. Eating and drinking, 3 years and 7 months. Using social media, 6 years and 8 months. Watching TV, 8 years and 4 months. And sleeping, 26 years and 5 months. Isn't that amazing to see that? It's like, man, I'm wasting a lot of my time. In a lifetime, you'll spend about 18 days on Twitter, depending on if Twitter is your favorite. And I think this will vary based on what your favorite social media. 8 months on Instagram, Snapchat, a year and 2 months, and that won't be anybody in this room because many of us don't even know how to use it. Facebook, a year and 7 months, and YouTube, 1 year and 18 months. It is our modern day marketplace, but many of us use it incorrectly. We spend a lot of time on it, but in this time we spend on it, we do a lot of damage to the kingdom. Isaac Adams said in the tweets, and when I saw this tweet, I'm like, that's going in my presentation. You cannot do a lot of nuance in 280 characters, but you can do a lot of damage in 280 characters. You cannot do a lot of nuance, but you can do a lot of damage. How many of you have seen some damaging tweets to the body of Christ this morning, probably? And often you're thinking, they should know better than to post that, especially sometimes when you see the age of the person who posted. So because we do it wrong so much, there needs to be some rules of engagement when it comes to social media and apologetics. One of the first rules is to remember the purpose on the platform. Remember the purpose on the platform. When I graduated from seminary, Jude 3 was still young, and I saw something on social that really got to me. It really had my blood boiling. So I decided to tweet. And my tweet wasn't the best. It wasn't the most nuanced, wasn't the most thoughtful. And I remember getting a DM from my homiletics professor. And I was like, he never DMs me, so he must have a question. And he says, Lisa, call me. And I had taken him the first year of my seminary program, and I was over, but we were still friends. So I called him, and he said, what is the purpose of your platform? And I explained what the purpose of my platform, Apologetics to the African American context. He was like, what do you see the vision is for your ministry? And I said, I believe it's a global ministry that's going to impact people. And he says, does that tweet reflect where you plan to go in ministry? And I said, I don't think so. He was like, I'm just telling you because I see you doing great things, and I don't want you to put your foot in your mouth before you get there. And I appreciated him for taking the time to call me and to tell me that, because oftentimes we lose sight of the purpose of the platform. Our purpose as Christians is always to glorify God with our behavior on and offline. And oftentimes, because of the culture and getting caught up in the moment, we lose sight of the purpose and the goal. And even when we're doing apologetics online, we lose sight that the goal is not to get involved in meaningless arguments, but to make Christ attractive to those who have rejected him or see his claims as invalid. So the first thing we have to do is remember the purpose on the platform. The next thing to remember when you're engaging people who are skeptics online is to remember that questions have roots. Questions have roots. Oh, my roots is not coming up. No. But in the illustration of the picture, I'm not sure why it's not popping up on the screen for me, but it is a picture of a tree. And I like to liken the fruit on the tree to the questions that people ask us. So they may say that, is Christianity the white man's religion? Or they may say, is God sexist? Or they may say, does God exist? Usually those questions are rooted in underlying experiences. It may be trauma, it may be experiences with church, and oftentimes we engage just with the fruit that is the question and don't deal with the root. So what happens when I pick fruit off a tree? It's gonna grow back, right? But oftentimes in our engagement in social media, we realize that we're asking questions, and once we answer one question, then another question arises because that's not really their real question. But social media doesn't allow us the dialogue to get to the root of what the issue is. And so oftentimes we get stuck in arguments about something that's not really a person's question. I give this example. When I was in campus ministry, there was a guy who I met there, and we became good friends. But after campus ministry, you fall off, you disconnect from people over time. And I had got word that he had left the faith. Now, he was on fire in campus ministry, and now he's abandoned the faith. And he told a friend of mine he wanted to talk to me because he knew I did apologetics and he had some questions. So I met him in a restaurant called NOBTS. I don't know if y'all have that here, but it's like a Panera down south. And we were sitting there talking for 4 hours. I repeat, 4 hours. And he was just talking and was like, it's not fair. I don't believe in God because of hell, this whole concept of hell. And he was like, a good God wouldn't send people to hell. And we go through all of this and just going in circles for 4 hours. And his real issue was that he didn't like the restrictions that Christianity put on sexuality. But it started with hell, but it took 4 hours for him to get to what his real issue was. And I was like, what if I had stopped on just engaging him on the hell issue and was like, I solved that, I'm done. I would have never got to his real question. And so it's important for when we're engaging people to realize that oftentimes online, we're not even engaging what their real heart issue is. And that the time that we need to engage their real question is not going to be fixed in 280 characters. The next one in our rules of engagement is don't be a troll. Don't be a troll. Trolls antagonize others online by deliberately posting inflammatory, irrelevant, and offensive comments and disruptive content. I'll repeat that. Trolls antagonize others online by deliberately posting inflammatory, irrelevant, and offensive comments or other disruptive content. Many people hate trolls, but often they don't realize that they are a troll. Many people hate trolls, but they don't realize that sometimes they are a troll. People create fake accounts just to troll people. They create accounts and they don't put their picture, they put a picture of a cartoon. And they write inflammatory stuff. And some of these accounts have been exposed as actually people that are believers, that have taken on trollish behavior. Paul tells us in Timothy, don't have anything to do with foolish or stupid arguments because you know that they produce quarrels. Don't have anything to do with foolish and stupid arguments because you know they produce quarrels. William Coffin says something that I think is profound. When you fight fire with fire, you end up with ashes. When you fight fire with fire, you end up with ashes. And many of us attack people and become trollish because we feel attacked ourselves. And when we feel attacked, we start fighting fire with fire, and we end up not being a good representation of Christ. This is why it's important, the next rule of engagement, to know yourself. Why is this important? Because you need to know what your triggers are in order to know when it's time to back away from the computer. Know what insults you. I always think of people as emotional landmines. We all have things that trigger us in our lives, and if people step on us, it makes us blow up. And when you see yourself getting to that point, it's important to step away and say, you know what? Because that person said something that triggered something that somebody else said that I may not be healed from, I need to step away from the computer at this point, because if not, I'm going to engage in a debate that's not helpful. The next is consider yourself. Now, this is important. I always ask people who like to challenge or seek to transform people in statuses and tweets, how do you best receive information and criticism? Ask yourself this question. How do I best receive criticism? When I have changed in my life, how have I best received the information? Oftentimes, we try to change people in ways that will be offensive to us if someone else did it to us. How many times has 280 characters transformed your thought process? Ask yourself that. When has a tweet radically transformed my life? When has a Facebook status radically transformed my life or the way I see my faith? And what in that tweet or status made me change my position? And many of us say, man, it's been rare that has changed my mind. A status has changed my mind, a post has changed my mind. And then I would like to push it a step further. When you're wrong, how do you like to be critiqued? When you're wrong, how do you like to be critiqued? And I've done this in a workshop before. I've asked people to write out the steps they need to receive criticism. And usually it's no less than 5. They need somebody that's personally connected to them, that they trust, that they believe loves and cares about them. They need it to be said in a certain manner. All of these things. And I'm like, so if that is what you require, then why do you go so hard on statuses and tweets as if it automatically does something profound? Because it wouldn't even work for you. And when we consider ourselves in that manner, we'll think differently about what we post. This is another one that's hard for us. Humble ourselves. This is hard for seminary students because we're learning a lot of information. And what does the Bible say? Knowledge puffs up. And often we learn just enough to think we're smart. in seminary, they had us read this book called The Little Exercise for Young Theologians. And the author said in the book that he would never let a first-year seminary student preach because they think they know everything. One philosophy class, one apologetics class, one theology course, you become the discerner for all truth. And so engaging with people who have different ideas requires a level of humility that often we don't possess. I like to think about the humility it took for Jesus to be on earth with us and be constantly misquoted by those who he created and not fight every battle. To hear people misquote him and not feel the need to argue at everything. When he asked Peter, "Who do men say that I am?" Peter says, "Some say you're this person, some say you're that person." He didn't go to Peter and say, "Who was the person who said that I was such and such? I need to go and correct them." And yet we feel the need to go and correct everyone who misquotes Jesus all the time. We spend a lot of our energy doing that. And I'm not saying correction isn't necessary, but wisdom teaches us to pick our battles. And that requires a level of humility. My mentor used to say to me, "Lisa, study yourself to death, but pray yourself alive." And one of the ways that humility comes in our lives is through prayer. So we have to remember engaging, humble yourself. Remember, you will be misunderstood. You could say something with the most thoughtful intentions, put it in a way that you think people will receive it, and people will still misunderstand you. And that's okay. Jesus was misunderstood, so you're in good company. So just because you're misunderstood or misinterpreted doesn't mean that you have to start World War III on social media. This is a major key. I don't know if y'all know who DJ Khaled is. That might be too young for some of you. But defend your faith, not your ego. Defend the faith, not your ego. This is really critical because oftentimes in our arguments, it becomes about our ego and not about the faith. It becomes about us winning and not about the person we're engaging. And when we get to this point, we become a liability to the kingdom and not an asset. We become a person that other Christians have to apologize for because when you said something reckless, somebody screenshotted it and put it in the group chat, and now they're all talking about how reckless it was. You know, that's what happens on social. When somebody posts something reckless and they're of prominence or they're known to be a Christian, people usually screenshot you and put it in their group chat and talk about you in the group chat. And then other people have to defend what you said if they're a Christian, or it becomes a part of a news article. These are things that happen every day. It's not in a vacuum because it's public. I said this earlier, you don't have to engage in every battle. You could see somebody say something wrong and keep scrolling. It is a possible thing. It's just like your thumb, you just scroll up. Say, not today. I'm not going to engage that today. This is key. Remember, there is a person behind the screen. Oftentimes, we lose sight of the fact that these are real people behind the screen. And some people post just to antagonize. And this is important, and I didn't say this earlier, but I've said this before in another setting, that some people spend their lives posting, antagonizing stuff because it's profitable. So there's a whole machine behind social media where if on YouTube there's ad dollars, on Facebook there's ad dollars, especially if you post a video. If posts go viral, it can be very profitable. So some people post things that are outrageous that they don't even believe because it increased their viewership. And as you view it, the more outrageous you say, this is outrageous, I'm sharing it to my friends, I'm going to write a blog about it. The more views they get, the more money they get. And oftentimes we don't think about, like, this is a business for many people. This is profitable. This is how they sustain their lives, by saying outrageous things. But back to my point, there is a person behind the screen. There's a person that is either doing it for a helpful reason or a harmful reason. Abdul Murray said something at his lecture with Ravi in Delaware, at Delaware State. Don't answer questions, answer people. Don't answer questions, answer people. And I thought Abdul was very wise in saying that, because when we answer people, we realize that there is a person that has experiences, that has trauma, that has a family, and they're just like us, and they need compassion. But when we're just answering questions, we're in the battle of ideas. And so, but when we remember that people are people, it helps us deal with them with a level of care. A biblical apologetic doesn't just have the right answer, it gives the answer the right way. 1 Peter 3:15 says we ought to give a defense for the hope that we have with gentleness and respect. Peter in that scripture says we ought to give a defense, but a biblical defense is packaged the right way, and that package is with gentleness and respect. So it's not just about having the right answers. We've spent a lot of time in this conference about getting the answer right. But if it's not given in the right way, it'll fall on deaf ears. And this is the final rule of engagement before we go into best practices. Is to pause and pray before you post. To pause and pray before you post. If we pause and pray before we hit send, a lot of times, half of the stuff we might not hit send on. And you may say, Lisa, what are we praying for? We're praying for the person on the opposite end that we're trying to correct. And we're praying that God will give us wisdom on how to say what we think needs to be said. We're praying for the people on the opposite side of the screen, and we're praying for wisdom on how to say what we think needs to be said. Pray and pause before you post. This is important. These rules are important because in apologetics, Ergen Cantor says that there are two forms of apologetics: incarnational and informational. Incarnational being the embodiment of the message, living out the Christian faith in a way that defends the message, and informational, being able to articulate a defense for the faith. I like to describe these things as two wings on a plane. Just by a show of hands on here, who prefers the left wing on the plane when you're getting ready to fly? Left, okay. Any right wingers? No? Okay. Why is that? Because without both wings, what's happening? We ain't going nowhere. And oftentimes, our apologetic method falls short because we don't embody the message, or we don't have the information. And so we need both. And so our method or our rule of engagement on social media and apologetics has to have the right answer and be said the right way. Here's some best practices that have helped me with social media. And the reason I use these is because Jude 3 Project is primarily an online ministry. So we do a lot of digital work through Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. We also have events, but a lot of work we do is digital. And one of the things that I find helpful in doing apologetics online is when explaining big ideas, use video. When explaining big ideas, use video. When I quoted Isaac earlier when he said that a lot of nuance can't be done in 280 characters, it is very true, and I think the answer to that is to use video to explain complex ideas. It gives you opportunity to be more nuanced. It gives you it gives others an opportunity to hear your tone. It gives others the opportunity to hear compassion from your voice. It gives you an opportunity to share your story. Video is extremely helpful, and it's important for our organization because we've noticed that a lot of Hebrew Israelites have converted many people through videos, 4-hour-long videos that people watch. So it's not that people don't want information, but it's often the way we present it. So when you're hearing all this, you might get discouraged and say, well, I don't need to post anything. No, it's not about just waving the white flag and saying I can't engage on social media, but it is about using wisdom in your methods. And one of the ways to use wisdom and explain big ideas or concepts is to use video. This is key. Ask more questions, make less statements. So what you want to do is invite people to think critically about their beliefs in your posts. So what does that look like? One of the big issues that we're engaging right now for people is Christians that are hypocrites. That will be one of their biggest objections to the Christian faith. How many of you have heard that? Christians are hypocrites. I don't want to be a Christian because Christians are hypocrites. Many people have heard that. So one of the ways that you could post a status about that is what is your experience with Christianity in your life? What has been your experience with church or Christianity in your lifetime? And let people just post in the comments what their experience has been. What have been your biggest objections to Christianity? And let people post what their objections have been. And that way you're accumulating data to create videos, and also you're getting people to think about their beliefs. Because oftentimes when they're writing it out, sometimes they think more critically than when they're just answering yes or no. One of the ways I found this helpful is as a banker at Bank of America. Thank God I'm not there anymore. But after undergrad, I was a banker at Bank of America, and my manager, she said, I need to coach you, Lisa, because I feel like you haven't had as many checking accounts as you need to. And I'm like, okay. She was like, look at this. Why didn't you ask them about getting a savings account with us? And I said, well, they only had $25 in their checking account, and I didn't feel the need to ask them, did they want to diversify that $25? Hey, do you want to put $5 in a savings? I mean, you can't even start a savings account at Bank of America with $5. So I was like, well, what would be the point? And she was like, well, just because they don't have money here doesn't mean they don't have money elsewhere. I was like, oh, that's a great point. So she's like, I need to coach you on some open-ended questions. I was like, okay. So she was like, the next time they come in and only have $25, ask them, hey, are you saving for anything? If they say yes, what are you saving for? I'm saving for a house. How much have you saved? Well, I saved about $15,000. Oh, okay. Where is that money? Oh, it's at Chase. Okay. Have you considered consolidating your accounts? Here at Bank of America, we offer some helpful services for consolidation, a higher interest rate, all of that jazz. And I was like, man, that's helpful. I could actually transfer some customers. And I was able to do it after I was coached. The same way in our apologetic method. Sometimes we don't ask questions for discovery. We just ask questions to see, can we show the person what we've learned from our apologetic course? So it's like, do you believe in the existence of God? They're like, no. Okay, great. I got a moral argument for that. And we go into our moral argument. We don't ask them, so why do you not believe in God? At what age did you stop believing in God? What happened? All of those are helpful in our discovery. So it's important. You can't do as much of that as you could one-on-one as quickly. But it is helpful, though, to ask those questions on your posts to help get more information about those you're engaging online. When nuance is needed, move to the inbox. People are more open in private than they are in public because ego gets involved on public timelines. So even if you're getting traction with someone and proving to them that they're wrong, often it's wiser to move and say, hey, I would love to talk about this, but I want to talk about it in a more helpful way. Can we talk about this in the inbox? Or if you know the person, say, hey, can I call you? To me, it's offensive when people have people's number and they shame them on social when they could just call them. That's respect. Or they could just message them and say, hey, can we talk about this more? So one of the most helpful best practices is when nuance is needed, move to the inbox, or if you know the person, pick up the phone. This is another helpful best practice. Assume the best about the people on the other end of the screen. Assume the best. Oftentimes we assume the worst because of what we've seen other people be on social media. We've seen the nastiness. So we stop seeing people as human and we start assuming the worst about them. And one of the most hurtful things to me is when people assume the worst about me online. It's like, you know my beliefs. You know that's what I wasn't saying. You know that clip was out of context. But we'll see a clip of somebody that we've respected or known before, and we'll say, oh, we'll take that clip and say, this is what they're saying, and respond to them and write a whole dissertation in response without saying, hey, should I call them? Or should I watch the full thing before I start critiquing them or showing how wrong they are? So it's best to assume the best about people on the other end of the screen. One of the things I've found very helpful is don't use words like always and never, use words like sometimes. You ever been in an argument with someone? And I hear this happens in married couple arguments a lot. Somebody will say, you never take out the trash. And then the guy will say, well, actually, I took out the trash 2 weeks ago on Thursday. And oftentimes when we get in arguments or debates with people and we use terms like always and never, people will jump on the fact that actually I did do that or I did say that this time. I might have not said it every time, but sometimes I do. And so it throws off the communication. So in your engagement, try to use words like don't use words like always and never, use words like sometimes. This is key when engaging people online about faith. The goal is not to win arguments, but to win people. The goal is not to win arguments, but to win people. That is the goal of apologetics. Some of us are in apologetics because we like to fight, but we should be in apologetics because we like evangelism, because it is a means to leading people to Christ. If people coming to know Christ is not the goal of your apologetics, then it's purposeless. And when you don't remember what the goal is, you'll be arguing with people all the time. I want to promote some of the Jude 3 project resources before we get to Q&A. For some reason, my pictures are not showing up. But we have a new curriculum through Eyes of Color. It is a contextualized guide to helping Black Christians know what they believe and why. So it's apologetic, catered to the African American context. We have an online course, and we have a podcast, and you can check out all of that at jude3project.org.